Hi everyone, what's up? This is Rebecca Strauss. I'm the editor at Scuba Diver Life, and I am here today interviewing Adam Maire and Christine West. I'm going to introduce them first, and then I'm going to let them in on the stream so we can have a little conversation, and then they are going to show a video, and we're going to chat about that, and then you guys are going to have an opportunity to have opportunity to ask any questions that you may have about cold water diving. So, Adam and Christine. Around the world, Adam Maire and Christine West have worked together professionally as a dive team to explore remote and challenging underwater environments. After gaining thousands of dives in tropical waters, they began temperate and cold water diving in Alaska 5 years ago as a way to continue understanding the underwater world. They are now passionate and determined to keep exploring areas that are rarely observed below the surface to share the stories of the life that thrives in these special waterways. They both work 6 months per year for Lindblad National Geographic Expeditions as undersea specialists on expedition ships, while maintaining personal projects the rest of the year. Recent explorations have included Alaskan lakes and salmon streams, recently deglaciated lagoons filled with glacial silt, a shipwreck in the Aleutians, and more. All right, with no further ado, let's add Adam and Christine. Here we go. Hey guys, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
Rebecca.
Good. All right. So I just introduced you guys, and now maybe we can chat a little bit about your background. I know we were just talking about this before. You guys are Nat Geo, work for Nat Geo Lindblad.
Yes.
We do.
Okay. And you're going to talk to us a little bit today about cold water diving.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Do you want to show the video, and then we can chat while that's going on?
Yeah. I think we're just going to show some clips we've seen recently, both when we're out with Lindblad National Geographic Expeditions, but also in our own projects, just so that people kind of have a chance to understand what we're talking about and know that there's such beauty below the surface. So we just want to start with that.
Okay, cool. Here we go.
Great.
All right. Okay, so maybe you can narrate for us what we're seeing as we're watching.
Yeah, we'll kind of fly through some areas where we're seeing a lot of jellies. We have beautiful kelp forests that go, from California all the way up to Alaska. But there's areas where we have bright, vivid colors of, anemones, sea stars, lots of crabs, and then Metridium, or these big, beautiful fields of whites and oranges that line rocks and other substrates. So it's quite varied.
Yeah, it's neat to kind of see. You can see in the video that there's a lot going on. And a lot of times when you're in the cold water places, you look down and you can't see very far. But sometimes just a kind of a layer of milkiness, and you break through that, and there's so much color below, especially if you can bring a light. And that's kind of what we wanted to highlight in the video here, is just the diversity that you can see there.
And this is Alaska. This is all shot in Alaska, right?
Most of it. I think I'm seeing some giant kelp. So some of this might be the Channel Islands, which is off of California. Actually, very similar water temperature. But most of this Dungeness crab, this is all Alaska.
Now, is there a season for diving in Alaska? When did you shoot all of this? I'm assuming you aren't diving in the winter.
It's harder to get into these remote places outside of summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what are the typical visibilities and depths of these kinds of dives?
A lot of times, if you're used to tropical diving, it's not quite as good a visibility. So you might get 20 feet, 30 feet sometimes. And we try to be pretty conservative. 60, 70 feet would typically be a max.
So this part is really neat. We love diving in cold water because of the level of exploration, these things that you've never seen, including things like vertebrates, like fields and fields of brittle stars. In this clip, for example, when we did this dive in Alaska, we were just enjoying what we anticipated seeing, and then found actually a sea star fall that was being, we figured, devoured by brittle stars, which brittle stars are detritivores, so it was a very big surprise. But this is a really neat example of, when you get close, you can find these amazing stories in cold water that, are tough and challenge us and are so rewarding. But sometimes you have to look a little bit more closely.
It's something that warm water diving is great on its own, but stuff like this you don't often find in the warm water, and that's why cold water diving, just this whole level of exploration.
And it looks like the vis is pretty good for this.
Exactly.
Wow. It looks like there were thousands of these.
Oh, they were everywhere.
It was awesome.
It was like this Indiana Jones where the snakes are on the floor. That's what it looked like.
And what did you call them, Christine? What did you say they were? That it was surprising to find them there?
They're brittle stars. The orange mass in the corner, that's a big sea star that's died and it's fallen down. It's a sunflower sea star. And then when we shine the lights on it, our scuba lights, our photo lights, we noticed that thousands and thousands of these brittle stars were coming down to investigate the fallen sea star.
And this is typical area for them and typical behavior?
Absolutely. You definitely will find sunflower sea stars at many depths, but usually below 50 feet in many parts of Alaska. Brittle stars you will find absolutely everywhere.
Okay. And now tell me a little bit about the diversity of what you see in the cold water versus what we all might be used to seeing in warm water dives, because that looks pretty diverse and colorful to me. So I'm going to switch this over so we're side by side again.
All right.
There we go. And I know you guys have some photos that you want to show a little bit later, so let me know when those are ready to queue up, and I will switch them back. So tell us a little bit about the difference in diversity.
There's just so much diversity in the cold water. If you're in the warm water, if you're used to snorkeling and diving in warm water, you'll know that the reefs have a lot of life, and you'll see a lot of fish on the reefs. But once you get off those reefs in the warmer waters, there's not a lot to see. And in the cold water, it's just so much more productive, and you just have such a variety of life, a lot of things that are filter feeding through there. And we'll have some photos that I think here in a little bit of some of the things we'll see that filter feed, but it's really unexpected if you've never been in the ocean, in the cold water before, because like I said, often it looks so dead from the surface, but there's so much going on.
And so tell me how you both started diving professionally as tropical divers, but you now mostly choose cold or temperate. So why did you make the switch, and tell me why. Convince me to put on a dry suit.
I got really lucky. Love diving in Hawaii. That's where we live. But I took a job as a naturalist in Alaska one summer about 6 years ago with Snorkel Alaska, excellent company in Ketchikan. And we were free diving and snorkeling in this beautiful drop off right from shore. And that just sort of blew my mind. Like when you first start getting trained in warm water, you kind of think of the world in terms of dive sites. This was uncharted. Get in the water, show some people some amazing things. And that right there, I was hooked. Absolutely need to keep exploring.
Yeah. And then we were expedition leaders in Alaska for a while, and I've got a photo. We would take people hiking and kayaking. And so we're seeing all these beautiful waterways in Alaska, and being divers and dive instructors, we're used to being in the water and checking things out. And we felt like we were just exploring half of Alaska by water. And so I've got.
Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this photo, we worked for a company called Alaska Wildland Adventures for several years, and they have a lodge in Kenai Fjords National Park. And this is their glacier lodge. And we would often come here, and you can just see how gorgeous that is. These pristine waterways, and we weren't getting in. And so we eventually decided it was probably time to get in. And one summer we just started taking our dry suits and our mask and our fins, and if we had a chance, we would dive, and we were getting in everywhere we could. And so this is actually a picture of Christine. I don't know if it's going to come up here.
So yeah, that's what was one of my questions, is how you just decided to dive in areas that there aren't official dive sites. So you guys would just kind of look at a body of water and say, yeah, why not, kind of thing?
Yes, but you have to be really careful with that. Okay. Especially rivers and things. You've got, like, if you're going to go see salmon, for example, you're not going to be the only critter in the forest looking, right? So usually you have to kind of have a plan of one person snorkeling, for example, in the river, another person on safety watch looking for bears. So you have to have an idea of what you're about to do, and then of course make modifications to kind of accommodate the environment. But yeah, you get in.
Yeah. And what you did a lot of river diving, lake diving, all sorts of different waterways, it looks like.
Yeah. Especially it's just to kind of answer the question of, what lives in these places, especially places that were covered in ice 30 years ago, right? Like at the face or close to the face of a glacier. As that ice recedes, what takes foot first, right? Somebody's got to go take a look, and we did. We do.
Yeah. And so would you say that you're just like discovering dive sites? Do you go back to the same sites a lot?
Well, sometimes. So a lot of times we'll try it once and never go back. We actually did a dive and drive from Key West, Florida, all the way up to Alaska one year.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
It was amazing.
Awesome.
Where did you dive between Key West and Alaska? Because that's a lot of Midwest.
It was a lot of
Midwest. Where I am right now.
We did. We tried to follow the coast, and we got chased off the coast by a hurricane. Did a few springs in Florida. We did lakes all over. There was a lake a couple lakes in Arkansas we actually didn't even plan on. We were just camping, and it was decent visibility.
Oh, we got in.
And so then we planned on going north up through Montana, but it was too early in the season. None of the parks were open. So south, and we dove in Lake Mojave. We dove in Lake Mead. We worked with a company, Scuba, out of Las Vegas, and they took us diving in Lake Mojave. And it was just amazing. And then we and dove off of Seattle. And this is actually the end of that. This is our first
picture?
Shore dive. Yeah, that's Christine right off the shore in Seward, Alaska, off the Sea Life Center. We did a shore dive, and we actually did this dive about 4 times, and it never worked for us. It wasn't good. We kept trying.
Well, you got a cool picture out of it.
It worked really well, yeah.
Nicholas Brown has a question from a few minutes ago. What is your favorite organism to see in cold water?
Nick Brown.
Hi, Nick.
Hi, Nick. Do you have an answer?
I don't know. I like so many of the small things, but I really love the jellies. And I know you don't just see them in cold water, but we see them so much in Alaska and Canada and through the Aleutians. And I have so much respect for an animal that doesn't have a brain and can take up so much of the ocean.
Yeah. Have you guys seen, kind of as a follow-up question, in your time of diving in cold water environment, have you seen any changes underwater? Climate change wise, have you seen anything, any environmental, ecological changes?
I think more in warm water than cold water, but it's just because I've been a dive instructor for, 15 years or something. You have more of a baseline. Cold water, the big changes I'm seeing are where the face of the glacier ends. That's very obvious. And so the place where last year, there's no way I could get that close to this rock because it's covered in ice, now is revealed for several feet or further.
Right.
Yeah. And that's sort of a bummer, I know, but that's a very noticeable change.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Do you want to, Liz has a question, but first you guys want to tell us what this picture is?
Yeah. So it's just, you're talking about finding the dive sites and everything. And this is we were up in Alaska, and we went by the stream and we saw some salmon in it. And so Christine's getting ready to go in, and I'm watching for bears as she tries to go get salmon.
Have you ever seen bears out on one of these dives? Like while you've been? Oh.
Yeah, we've never had an issue, but we've seen them on the shoreline a couple times.
I think for a while there were some crazy people getting in cages so they could see the bears from underwater in Alaska. I saw that somewhere. Liz's question. She says, "Hi, Adam and Christine. What is the coldest water you guys have ever dove in, and what is your preferred dry suit to dive cold water in, and why?" So yeah, what's the coldest?
30, was it 36?
Yeah, 36, I think.
Yeah.
And it was actually in a lake near my parents' home in Nebraska. We were there in the late winter. And
for our friends on Celsius, that's 2 degrees Celsius.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was cold, but we actually, this photo here is me getting ready to go in up in Alaska again. And the dry suit is the desert from Cressi. Cressi helped us get these dry suits, and they've really kind of been a life changer. It was so hard to get into so many of these cold places without a dry suit. And this has been amazing.
Yeah, the Cressi neoprene is so great because can actually sit vertical in the water column without the suit attacking your body. So if you're snorkeling, that's going to be a major consideration because, of course, you can't get air inside the suit as easily. So it's worked really, really well for these diverse environments.
Cool. Now tell me about this Nebraska dive site.
There's a dive shop in Kearney who actually has adopted one of the lakes and sandy channels, it's called. And there's a plane and a boat, and allegedly there's a statue of a hippopotamus in there, but we never found it.
Oh, I see.
But it's a short drive from my folks' house, so we got to just cruise over there and hop in, and it's very green. There's a lot of little fish, but it was definitely, we've dove it a few times, but it's definitely very, very cold in the winter.
This is kind of the negative to exploration. A lot of times things are just like this. It is super hard to see, but when visibility changes, man, the payout is incredible.
And where was this?
This is Hidden Lake up in Alaska on the Kenai Peninsula.
Okay. And tell me a little bit about the equipment that you guys would use as cold water divers. Like, what are your equipment considerations? Do you have to use different rags? Like, tell me how the cold water equipment setup differs from a warm water equipment setup.
Yeah, definitely. A first stage and a second stage that are made to not ice up is key. Even though the water temperature is not freezing, when you're exhaling, that moisture comes out and it can cause things to freeze up. So you want regs that are set up for that. Again, you want to make sure that you have a mask that has an amazing seal.
Yeah, you can't be futzing around with your mask when you can barely use your hands. Mm-hmm. So super thick, nice, well-fitting gloves and well-fitting hood. That's a life changer right there. Mm-hmm. And then your fins, because you're now exploring in places that I don't know what's going to happen with the current. We think we know. We've charted it. We've asked around. We're looking at the tide tables. We think we're right. But if you don't have super strong fins then to bail you out if something changes, you'll be pretty sad. So yeah, those are really important to us. And then of course, your hands, the warmth of your hands, especially when you're working with cameras, that's what makes the length of the dive anyways. If your hands get cold, it's kind of over.
How long would you say your typical dives are in these kinds of environments in water that's 40 degrees?
We probably stick to about 45 minutes. We can get sometimes, but we're much more conservative in the cold water, and especially because we're in such remote locations. When we're on the ships with Lindblad Expeditions, there's a shipboard doctor, and we have a Zodiac that takes us out, and so we have a little support. When we're on our own, just doing shore dives or lake dives, it's just us. And so we definitely try not to push our limits because there's no reason to risk something when you're so far from help. And so, like Christine said, we really watch how cold our hands get. We don't bleed our tanks nearly as low, and it's worked well so far. We've been pretty safe about it.
Good. Safety first.
Exactly.
Okay, so what are we looking at now?
So again, this is Metridium. And if you're, you don't have to be in Alaska to see these beautiful sites. You can find them, often on piers, like in Seattle, for example. I know you can go dive and see these all the way down to, at least California, right?
Yeah.
Northern California. But these are filter feeders. And so you're finding them thriving in these areas that are just, in this nutrient-rich water. They're absolutely gorgeous and can be up to, this is giant Metridium, it can be up to 2 to 3 feet tall.
Oh, wow. And are they always white?
No, they can be pinks and oranges. They're beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay. And what causes their color? What's the coloration from?
I think part of it is their diet.
What they're eating? Yeah, that's what I was kind of wondering.
Yeah, because they're going to be in fields. So often you'll see a big pile of white ones and then you'll see some orange ones. So it's diet, height, because that's going to consistently change your diet. And then I also think that some of them are just individual subspecies.
Yeah, and you get these fields because, like we talked about, the visibility is typically not as good in cold water. And it's because of all of the nutrients and how rich it is. So if you're in the tropics and you have 100 feet of visibility, that's beautiful, but there's nothing really alive in the water. But you can see all the particles, even in the sides of this photo. And that's all just planktonic life and food sources in the water. And that's why you get fields of these plumas anemones, is because they're filter feeders, and they're just sitting there eating that stuff as it goes by. And so that's back to your other question of the diversity. It's that life in the water that allows for the diversity, that you get so many filter feeders and bivalves, which brings in sea stars, and
whole community.
It's a whole community.
Awesome. Any crazy sightings, like any like unexpected, oh my God, I can't believe we saw that animal on this dive kind of thing?
I mean, I feel like there's a lot of things going on above you that are very much shadows. So you'll lions, for example, that are going right over your head. They'll bang on your tank. And you're not totally, like, I hope those were stellar sea lions. You're just constantly kind of looking over your shoulder. That's why if one of you is filming, the other one's really working safety. But yeah, there's little surprises, because sometimes we have 5 feet of visibility between kelp, this water, this nutrient-rich water. So you have to be up against a substrate to get, a picture or a video of something like this, where you're getting that beautiful color. You got to be right up against it.
And how big is this nudie? Like how?
An inch, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Small.
Yeah. I think the crazy things, when I was diving in the Aleutians this last summer, I got chased out of the water by a bull stellar sea lion. Oh, yeah. And the stellar sea lions, if you've ever been in the water or seen California sea lions, the stellar sea lions are quite a bit bigger. They're 2,000 pounds sometimes. And I don't think he was happy we were there.
So if they want you to leave, you leave.
Yeah. It was the end of the dive, and we were ready. We were trying to get on the Zodiac, but I've never heard of them actually attacking someone, but I don't really want to be the first one.
No, definitely not. Okay, so go ahead. What's this one?
This is just I'm just watching the time, and I want to make sure and talk about how beautiful the things in all of our backyards are. That was where all this started, right? Was the idea of exploring places that are near to you and that you maybe haven't seen a certain aspect of. I took this of Adam. It's hard to see, unfortunately, but in the upper left corner, this is a stream that's filled with salmon that are ready to spawn. And so that's why you're seeing all of that red.
Oh.
But what's really special about it is that, there's times that you want to take or make an amazing image, but it's really not about the picture. It was about being right there and being part of this ecosystem, just even taking a look down into this place that we didn't understand at all. I didn't understand that, that the life that was in there and the depth. We learned all about silt and how you can't always wear fins. Sometimes you can't even really, you just have to suspend yourself at the surface and hold onto a branch in order to see these things. Otherwise, the silt will fill up the water column. But regardless, I mean, the stories that we got to share because of that experience were far more valuable than the picture.
Than any picture. So it's about the experience a lot of the time too. I agree with that. I'm not an underwater photographer. I love underwater photography, but for me, a lot of it, diving is about the experience. And one of the things I like about just diving without a camera or snorkeling or anything is that that's the only thing I'm doing. So I can be completely in the experience. So I completely understand. We have at least 5 minutes or so more. Tell us a little bit about, so do you guys always dive together? And I was going to ask if you have any place that you're diving coming up, but I'm assuming that is there any diving in your near future? Maybe.
We've got some pretty neat dives coming up. So we can still dive in Kona, Hawaii. And so we can go as long as we don't stay on the beach, as long as we just cross into the water, we can dive now.
Yeah.
But both very lucky that we have our dream dives coming up in Antarctica, coming up next spring or in February. So dream dive, here we go.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. And tell me, you kind of touched on this before, but like with people limited to mostly staying home, give us some advice on kind of exploring our immediate surroundings and from a naturalist point of view, both topside and underwater. Like
it's just a great point. You can still get out and explore things in your own backyard. And I think now is a great time to take advantage of any of the extra free time you might have, just to pay attention to the birds. Or here in Hawaii, we have geckos everywhere, so I got to follow them around and take photos of them. And if you have access to get out to the wilderness at all, go out and check it out. And if you have a waterway, if you can get in, if you have any of the equipment to get in and just put your face in the water, it can definitely change your mind about what you're seeing. But if you don't, you can put a weight on a GoPro and attach it to a string. Just put it in a stream somewhere, put it in a lake, set it on time lapse, and see what shows up. There's so much life in the lakes and rivers, and you don't have to do a dive trip all over the world to see this stuff. Just check out what you have where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a matter of making do. This is actually great. And it's just an untapped resource for exploration and discovery. It might change your mind about Coldwater.
Yeah.
Oh, I definitely want to do it. I'm just a chicken. There's really no, I have no excuse other than just being cold. But
Well,
I definitely will.
We definitely have to say a big thank you to Cressi, because having those dry suits made it possible to do so much of this.
Yeah, that kind of changed our life.
Yeah.
One little piece of equipment can actually open up all of these options, because your impression of Coldwater is that you will be cold, but remember, this gear will take care of you if you use it properly and make it that you get to get in the water more. And isn't that better than just once a year or something?
Do you guys prefer cold water diving, dry suit diving now to wetsuit diving?
I love it all.
I would just say they're different. I love being able to just throw on board shorts and a rash guard and hop in the water in warm water. You don't have all the equipment. You have all this mobility. You can do whatever you want. You have visibility, but the unexpected and the exploration feeling that you get being in places with chunks of ice floating overhead, or the possibility of these larger mammals cruising by.
Yeah.
It's exhilarating. And then just the diversity that you find in the cold water. So I would say they're different. I wouldn't give either one up. No,
that's a good answer.
Okay, cool. Well, if you guys have anything else you want to add, we're about at half an hour right now. Thank you guys so much for your time. You've almost convinced me to do my dry suit.
Well, thank you very much, Rebecca. Thank you, for supporting us and asking fun questions, because we just love being able to share these stories so that, people know how many amazing places there are still to explore and discover as soon as our situation changes.
Yeah. And I believe that this stream is going to stay on the Cressi page for anybody who's watching or listening. And so if anybody has any further questions, please feel free to add them to the stream, and we will make sure that you guys see them and we get everybody's questions answered.
Yay.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. All right. Take care. Have fun in Hawaii. I'm very jealous.
Yeah, thank you, Becky. Thank you, Cressi. And hello, everyone. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.